I'm going to remind you of a couple of things that we're utilizing Mahzor Lev Shalem, which is the golden brown Mahzor the Temple Beth has been using for just inside of a decade. I'm going to share it on my screen as well as we're doing our learning. I'm also going to remind you that there are a couple of resources you have at your fingertips. One of them is this High Holy Day Playbill, which I'll share on the screen in a minute, and we'll do a little bit of review from last time. Secondarily, we also have those slides at our fingertips. We are not going to look at any slides today. Today, we're going to do a little review of that High Holy Day Playbill, and we're going to get right into the Siddur again. But I want to do a review of what we did in the Siddur up until this point. All right? So, the Mahzor at this point. You're right. Now, just like every rectangle is a square, but not every square is a rectangle, correct? Right? Or is every square? Is that?
No, it's the other way around.
The other way.
Every square is a rectangle, I think.
Every square is a rectangle, but not every rectangle is a square. That's correct. Okay, very good. That is true. Every Mahzor is a Siddur, but not every Siddur is a Mahzor. But Barbara's still correct. I still misspoke. But I did want to take the opportunity to say every Mahzor is a type of Siddur, but it still shouldn't be called the Siddur. One night, it reminds me we should review, though. One thing that we should and can review from last week is that with this Mahzor, the reason that the Mahzor even exists in the first place is because there is so much material that comes from the High Holy Day liturgy that is not overlapping with the Sabbath or weekday liturgy that we need to have its own liturgy, its own Siddur, its own prayer book for us to access. That's why the Mahzor exists. Last week, we began, and the week before, by the way, we began from the very beginning in the morning, even though I told you that the beginning of services actually begins in the evening, because Vayhi Erev, Vayhi Boker, Yom, whatever, we begin in the evening. Well, High Holy Days, every day begins in the evening. Every day of the week begins in the evening. The prayer cycle begins in the evening, but we're still beginning our learning with the morning. We're starting with the morning blessings, and that's exactly where we began last week. So I'm going to pull up this High Holy Day Playbill. So far, everybody who's here right now, I believe, was with us either last week or the week before, which had the same set of kind of learning to it. So here is what we looked at our past unit. We took a look at Birkot Shachar. I'm going to remind you the stuff in blue is primarily in a category that overlaps with Shabbat or weekdays. It basically is the same stuff in terms of nusach, the way I don't usually use that word, that is to say the words of the liturgy. It primarily overlaps, but the music is what tells us what's different between Shabbat and weekdays and the High Holy Days. So, Birkot Shachar, Blessings of the Dawn, if you're looking in Lev Shalem, that begins on page 37. Birkot Shachar, that's where we started last week. We began by looking at what we began with in the home, and we went through some of the stuff. We reviewed what requires a minyan, that's the stuff in red. We went through some of the innovative psalms that were inserted into this particular Mahzor. We took a look at Mourner's Kaddish, and we looked at how the structure of that mimics basically weekdays and Shabbat writ large. Then we went to Pesukei de Zimra. We talked also last week a little bit about vocabulary and how that is Aramaic. Basically means Pesukim Shel Zimra, which just means the verses of song. And those verses of song are mostly taken from the book of Psalms, and we cheat every day actually, but every day of the High Holy Days we cheat and we skip to the end of the book of Psalms to Psalm 150. But before we get there, we start with a poem. You know I love to talk about how funny it is that Jews love poems, and yet poems are anathema. They're the opposite. They are not what we need to say to do the other thing that we talked a lot about last time, which was chiyuv, which is fulfilling our obligation. We have a sacred obligation to be in prayerful, worshipful conversation with the divine, according to the rabbinic tradition, if that's the part of the rabbinic tradition that we ascribe to. That's chiyuv, that's obligation, that's the stuff we are committed to doing. Poetry is at the other end of the spectrum. Right? That's just the stuff that people wrote and it sounds good, so it got printed, in this case, in the Mahzor. Baruch She'amar is a great poem. It ends with a blessing. Melech Mahulal Batish Bachot. The king who is exalted in praises, basically. Look at that. The sovereign exalted in praise. I'm like translating for myself freely as I already translated for myself on the page in front of all of us. Isn't that great? And then we're seated for the bulk of it. And we go through the Psalms that we do for Shabbat and festivals. We go through all those readings. We hit Ashrei, just as we hit Ashrei multiple times a day. We get to Psalm 150, and boom, symbolically, we finish the book. We took a look at Shirat Hayam. I mentioned how everybody loves that poem, but that poem's a biblical quote, but we might skip it this year. We took a quick look at Nishmat Kol Chai. And then I told you we got into a bit of a gray zone here with all this pink poetry stuff. We're kind of in this gray zone. Are we in Shachrit? Are we not in Shachrit? I also told you, maybe you remember, why did I put the split for Shachrit here? What was the final decision? Why did I say for sure? This is where I'm going to call it the switch over to Shachrit, which translates to dawn, but is the service. Why did I say that I put that there? Do you remember?
Music changes?
Very close, because the music's already changed back here. So we're very close to that. So why did I put it here?
I can't remember.
It's because it's where the shaliach or shlichat tzibor switches over. It's where the prayer leader switches over. So because it's where a new leader takes over, I say that's a new unit of prayer. We're going to say that's where it is. But the truth is the line is blurred. Right? Nishmat Kol Chai is neither really here. What's the saying in Yiddish?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. It's a very smushy phrase. It is very gray zone, but the leader switches over right here, and we took a look at how funny that page is edited there. If you take a look at page 145, it doesn't really indicate that, but okay, that's where you start. The new leader starts at HaMelech, emphasizing the themes of Malchut, particularly on Rosh Hashanah, of sovereignty on the days of awe. We rise there for Yishtabach, and then, oh boy, the reason why this is highlighted in blue overall is that the structure of Shachri, which we are going to continue with in just a moment with some brand new material, not really new, but brand new for this cohort, we're going to continue with in just a moment. We're going to go through how this structure basically mimics not only every weekday morning, every Shabbat morning, and every festival morning, how we do Baruch Hu, 2 blessings, Shema, another blessing, and Amidah. We do it every morning. We even do it every evening. It's the same structure. We love that structure. We get called to worship. We do a couple of blessings. We witness God's oneness. We say one more blessing about God having redeemed us. Right? The story of Egypt. Little Micha Mocha. And then Amidah. That is our structure every single time. Last time, we only got as far as the Shema and the witnessing and the oneness, which falls into the category of, by the way, and this is where I'll end, and then I'll take some questions and thoughts and whatever else you might have to add. The Shema falls into the category of biblical quote. Right? It's not a blessing. It's not a blessing because it's not in the blessing formula. It's not Baruch Atah Hashem. And it's not really a poem. I mean, you could call it a poem, but it's not a composed poem by a human hand in recent memory. It's a biblical quote about God's oneness and monotheism. And that's as far as we got last time. So I am going to stop the screen share and ask if there are any thoughts or questions. And then we're going to go back to it in just a minute, and we're going to look ahead at the Playbill, and we're going to get ourselves a little bit further and look into the Mahzor. Any thoughts or questions from carried over from last time? Dan?
So since I missed last time, why is your page number 145 and not 67? In the blue, when you said switching over to Shachrit, it says 145, but it says 66 before it and 68 below it.
Oh, it should be 67. It's probably a carryover from the other Sidor.
Oh, so it was a cut and paste error, as we like to call it.
Yes, I think it's a cut and paste error. It should be 69.
Well, you have just 69 on the script here.
It should be 69.
Okay, 69. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're right. Should be 69. Very good.
Okay, thanks.
I'm glad you checked. Any other thoughts or questions or things you caught? It was a good catch. No? Okay, I'm super excited to keep going. Okay, so we are going to get far today. We're going to do this. I'm so excited. So, we're going to take a look at the Playbill just for a minute, and I'm going to preview where I'd like us to get. We're going to see if we get this far today together.
Now we're just getting through Rosh Hashanah today.
We're going to get through a lot of Shachrit and some of the Torah service today. That's where we're going to get today.
But
okay?
Is there going to be another meeting after this for?
Yes, this is meeting 3, and there are 6 meetings.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
cool.
So this is going to be halfway point after this.
Thank you.
Yeah, you've got it. So we've gotten through blessing 1, Or Chadash al Tzion Ta'ir, right? A new light will shine over Zion. We got through that one. Again, same exact language we use every day. Blessing number 2, Ahava Rabbah Avtanu. We love that melody. Then we got through the Shema. And then we're going to get to this next portion, which leads us up to, there's actually a whole thing, a whole poetry, but we're going to look at it. There's a whole page of poetry. Emet, emet, emet. We like to say a lot about truth in there. We have, Judy likes that part. There's a really great tune in there. Judy Weintraub likes that part. We get through a whole bunch about God's truthfulness, the truth about God's divinity. And then we get to God being our Redeemer, Ga'al Yisrael, a little Micha Mocha, a little quoting. And we get to Ga'al Yisrael. And then we get to the Amidah. When we get to the Amidah, we're going to notice a few things. We're going to notice in the blue the parts of the structure that remain the same. I want you to notice with me, let your eyes skip with me for a moment from the blue to the red, okay? Stick with me for a minute. The normative structure of the Amidah is that we go to our ancestors, right? We like to butter God up. Remember, God of our ancestors. Second part of buttering God up. God, you're super great. That's Gevurot, like Gibor. God, you are super great. That's the second part. Then to the red part, God's holiness. Okay, that part requires a minion. That's the normative structure of the Amidah, those first 3 parts. There's also a very, very funky thing that happens. I'm going to mention it when we get there about the Kedusha, where the Kedusha on the high holy days doesn't even end until a little bit later. We'll get there. Anyway, this is the normative structure of the Amidah. It's still there. It's still there, folks, okay? It's still there, but there's some stuff stuffed in between. The bright green stuff is only there on the high holy days, okay? So is the pink stuff, but the bright green stuff is there as miniature prayerful insertions, not intended as full poems or piyutim. They're intended as miniature prayerful insertions to be said at special times of the year, specifically on the high holy days, and some of them said on the Aseret Yemei Tshuva, the 10 days in between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, right? And then these pink things, poems, right? These are piyutim, which we're going to look at. And those are totally optional poems that get thrown in there, which are like, you know what, friends? I know we're in the middle of an Amidah, but how about some poetry? That's what those are. That's all they are, okay? They're just some ripe, awesome, beautiful. It's Rosh Hashanah. What better could we have to do than open our hearts and our souls to God? Let's pray a little poetry. That's all they are. So we're going to look at those too. And then we get to the Kedusha. So the normal structure is there. Avot, Gevurot, Kedusha. Okay? The normal structure is there. And then, follow with me for just a second here. The normal structure is this. Then there is this structure. Remember that we skipped to the Kedusha? We're going to see what happens here is that we get to several paragraphs of God choosing us. That's a little extra little blessing we get in there. Yale v'yavo, which we get anytime we get to a new season. Then we get to a paragraph. We always get to an Elokeinu Ritzei paragraph. God's wanting. We want God to want something in a season. We'll get there too. That's the Maloch paragraph. So this is a normal structure for a special festival day. And then we get back to a normal structure for every single day of the week. Modim, gratitude to God. The priestly blessing, right, which we sometimes say at Friday nights at home. And Sim Shalom. So if you were to zoom out of this, I know it makes it tiny, but just bear with me for a second. If you were to zoom out of this.
Pardon me.
What's that?
What is the Hatimah?
Like, what is a Chatima or where?
No, what?
A Chatima, the word, I'm so glad you asked, the word Chatima literally means seal, like what a wax seal on an envelope. Lachtom, to seal, to stamp. Chatima is one noun form that refers to the end blessing that seals off the end of a prayerful paragraph. So a chatima either means literally the blessing that kind of cinches off the end of a paragraph, or sometimes it's used a little bit colloquially, but like sometimes it's used to refer to that same thing at the end of a psalm. So I might say at the end of a psalm for Kabbalat Shabbat, right, at the end of each of those psalms that we go through on Friday night, that I call the end of those paragraphs also a chatima, just a seal, a signature. Okay, so when you look at the structure, way zoomed out, forget about the words, just look at the structure. These first three parts, the blue, blue, and red, and the blue, blue, and blue, are totally normal to even every single day on the Amidah. It's just this middle section that gets all special for Rosh Hashanah. That makes sense? This is where we get all of our very special, especially those Uvachain paragraphs we get to look at. Somebody asked me something. Oh, I know. I think Barbara asked me last week. I can't remember if it was you or someone else asked me. What happens about, no, it was something where I said Uvachain paragraphs are going to be the demonstration of it. I have to listen back to the tape. I think it was something about the music where it was like, is it written out music for every paragraph? Or are you just like, could you kind of sing anything to it? Yeah, at the end of last class, we were talking about that. And here in this, when we get to that Uvachain paragraph, I'm going to show you something about that. All right. Let's look at it together. We're going to spend some time going through the pages, and I'm really excited. I'm going to try to keep an eye on your faces, and feel free to unmute yourselves and say, I recognize that, or what the heck are we looking at here? So here we go. I'm going to stop this.
Before you get to that, 1 second.
Sure.
See, you have the Chatima in several places, and a couple of them you have kind of tongue-in-cheek comments on that. What exactly is the Chatima? How does it do it? And what it makes it a big favorite?
That's exactly what I was explaining to Barbara, was a chatima is literally the blessing that seals off the end of a paragraph.
Okay, so the chatima is the blessing.
The Chatima itself is the blessing that ends a paragraph. So it is literally the blessing that or sometimes the end of a psalm that seals off and ends the paragraph. So Baruch atah Hashem, whatever ends the paragraph, right? So the end of the paragraph of the Chatima, for example, of the Kivanu v'charta v'otanu kidashta mikol hamim v'shabbat kodshecha b'yahava u'ratzon hinchaltanu. Get ready. Here's the Chatima.
Okay.
Baruch atah Hashem. Okay?
I got it. Thank you.
Chatima.
What you're saying actually is that's where the little mark is in the prayer books to indicate where the Chazan comes in and says it out loud when the rest of the prayer is said silently.
Barbara, made up middle name, Brager, absolutely. That is exactly what I am saying, is that is where Ashkenazi Chazanim come in. That is exactly it. Yep, 100%, you nailed it. Ashkenazi Chazanim, that is where we both, and by the way, we have a name for the top one too. I'm going to type it in the chat box. Are you ready? So the Chatima, I forgive that I can't put an underlined H in the chat box. Here we go. Chatima. That's the seal, okay? I'll put it in Hebrew as well, okay? So you can see Chatima, okay? And I want you to see in the same Hebrew form, I'm going to put in here. Petich. Oh, this is very weird font in the English. Petich. What is happening in the English? There we go. All right. And then
it kind of looks normal on my computer anyway.
Yeah, it looks very weird on mine, so it must be me. So Peticha, which I think even if you don't know Hebrew so well, you can tell that it's the same form, right? It's the same. You can see the parallel form of the word. Like what?
Opening.
Like exactly. Very good, Bonnie. So like liftoach or petach, like an opening. A peticha is the opposite of a chatima. So a peticha is the opening couple of verses. So Barbara, when a chazan starts a paragraph and then drifts away, like just bumbles off, that's called a peticha, an opening. So it's the opposite and the parallel. It's exactly it. And sometimes that's marked too, right? That's a peticha. And then that's a chatima. It doesn't even start with a bracha, but it's a chatima. You hear what I'm saying? It doesn't even have to start with a bracha, but it's a chatima because I chose to begin there. That makes sense? I started back there because I like to hear the sound of my own voice. I don't know. But because I started there, it became the chatima. All right? Yay for vocabulary. Judy, jump on in. Yes.
I'm going back to page 78.
Yes. I'm looking at page 78. Or I will be.
The Emet page.
Yes. We haven't gotten there yet, but sure.
You've not gotten there yet?
We have not gotten there yet. We're about to.
I'm going to do this in the spirit of the Peticha Chatima conversation.
Sure, go for it. And then we'll look at it together in a second. Yep.
Triangles.
Mm-hmm.
When inward.
Mm-hmm.
When they're so close together,
mm-hmm.
that's confusing for me.
Yeah, I find that confusing too. The reason why we do that in that particular paragraph, and it is very confusing, but the reason why there's an extra peticha and chatima there, which is not like really clear why, I believe, why we do lidur vadur hu kayam ushmo kayam v'chiso nachon u'malchuto v'munato la'ad kayamet, is because there is a custom. I believe the reason why that exists there marked off is that there's a custom for a lot of people to release their gathered tzitziot at the word la'ad. So I think the reason why that's marked there to do it out loud is because of that custom. I don't know for certain. I would be curious to know if someone has a better answer to that than I have. That would be very interesting.
Interesting because he went as far as one sentence. And I thought, if you just keep reading to the next triangle, then why need the second one? So are you saying that if they are too close together, generally just read out loud that first sentence, then jump back in with Emet, Yatahu Hashem, and go to the end of that short paragraph?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
You got it. All right, so now that we've gotten a little preview of it, let's look to that section post Shema and pre Amidah, and we're going to get through that Amidah together. I'm committed, but I don't want to rush it. So if we get slowed down by great questions, that's the best reason in the universe to slow down. So here we go. I'm going to share my screen with you again and go over to the Mahzor. Again, I ask for your patience with this funky reader, but I think we got this. I'm looking forward to it. All right, so we're going to go to page, let's see, let's start with Shema 77, okay? So we stopped and started here. So we're after the blessing that we saw, which was the second official blessing, right? We had the blessings of light, and then we get the blessing of love. Now we're on to the biblical quote of Shema. We have 3 paragraphs of Shema. We get 1, 2. We get to the next paragraph, 3. Remember that this course and all the courses that I've been teaching recently are about navigating as a member of the Kahal. This is not necessarily about leading it. If we were getting into that, I'd have other things to say. But if you're following along as a member of a Kahal, you should know the intention here is to give you as much time as you need to read through every word very precisely of the Shema on your own. The leader is going to look around and see, are people done reading on their own? They're actually looking for you to give them visual cues that you're done. And when they see that most people, 60% or more, are done, they're going to move on by doing Adoshem Elokeichem Emet. They're going to finish and move on to this next paragraph. This is where Judy was pointing to the multiple indications that a chazan or shaliach or shlichat tzibor, whoever's leading, might come in and lead, right? They might do a line or two here, right? I'm trying to get into the nusach in my mind.
She's always ahead of me. I can't stand it. What's
that?
She's always ahead of me. I can't stand it.
Yeah, she's ahead of me too. I'm trying to get my head into the new stuff. The door hu kayam u'shmo kayam v'chiso nachon u'malchuto v'emunato lad kayamed. Emet shatahu Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu Malkeinu melech Avotenu Goalinu Goel Avotenu Yotzreinu Tzor Yeshuateinu Vodenu Matzilinu Me'olam Shemecha Ein Elohim Zulatecha. And then they're going to pick up with Ezrat Avotenu Atahu Me'olam. And then you've got this long page. And it's a lovely, long, poetic, human-composed entry into the concept of God being a Goel, a Redeemer. If you look at the English, it's beautiful. Mimitzrayim Ge'altanu Adonai Eloheinu. From Egypt you have redeemed us, God, our Lord. Right? And freed us from Umi Beit Avadim Peditanu. By the way, how do you know it's poetry? This thing we talked about in our Sidor class called Tikbolet, which you see all the time in English poetry, but man, oh man, do the writers of poetry and the Sidor love to use this. It's saying the same thing twice, but with different words, which is very Jewish, right? So, Mi Mitzrayim Ge'altanu Adonai Eloheinu, Umi Beit Avadim Peditanu. In this case, it's actually a reverse tikbolet, like it's inverted. It's an inverted parallelism. So Do you see what I'm saying? Adonai, our God, you redeemed us from Egypt, and you freed us from the house of bondage.
Their firstborn you slayed, your firstborn you redeemed. Yeah.
Right, but just those first two verses, they're just saying the same thing, right. Just twice, right? Kol b'chorhem haragta u'v'chorcha ga'alta. You're right. Again, saying the same thing twice in a row, right? You split the sea, you drowned the wicked, you rescued your cherished ones. Up, we're out of the parallels. But now we're retelling the entire story again. Hey, we already did this. We already did Shirat Hayam. But you know what? We're going to tell the story twice because God performed this miracle for us, and we don't want to forget about it anytime soon. So we're going to go to the next page because that whole page we sort of do privately until we get here, and you see that little indication that we're approaching communal singing again, and usually the leader leads here. Moshe, look at this sneaky word in here. That never existed before in a Mahzor or a Sidor, but look at it. I'm going to show you right now. Hang on. Let me zoom in. Here it is. It's snuck in there. Moshe Miriam. Now, Miriam was always in this moment, but she wasn't always in the Sidor or Mahzor. Some editions of this Mahzor, I think early on, had it in red brackets, but I think eventually it made it just into the black print. I could be wrong. I could be thinking of a different word that had that switch happen in different editions. But Miriam does not exist in traditional / Orthodox world Mahzorim or Sidurim, right? Remembering that this liturgy exists in everyday liturgy, right? This is every Shabbat service, every weekday service. Before me,
quick question, backing up for a second.
Yeah.
The second paragraph of the Shema Baruch Shem Kavod is said quietly, except for Yom Kippur. And the
Correct.
question, of course, is why.
I'm going to put that in the parking lot, and I will answer that very happily in class 5.
Okay.
When we get to Yom Kippur. But it's going in the parking lot, okay? I promise not to forget.
All right.
So Miriam makes it into this moment, okay? And I just don't want you to trip over it. If you didn't grow up saying this word, that's okay. I didn't either. So Moshe u'bnei Yisrael lefanu shira v'simcha rabba ve'amru chulam. And then we're at Michamocha. You know Michamocha, right? Who is like you, God, among the other gods? The theology of that is amazing. That's so cool. By the way, direct quote from Shirat Hayam. Biblical quote. We already said that earlier in the morning, remember? Shirat Hayam, that's a direct quote. And also represents the theology of the time of the Israelites who were coming out of Egypt and the ancient world, in which God, meaning Elohim, was just one of many, many, many gods, and he was the best. Right? God was the best God. Who is like you among the gods? I mean, it's rhetorical. We know that. That's not the point I'm pointing out, right? But my point is the theology of God being unlike any of the other gods requires you to acknowledge that there are other gods, right? By the way, there's another moment we're about to get to in the Torah service where that's going to happen again. That's a teaser, which requires us to get to the Torah service, so I better move on. Then we get to this line. This line, the leader says first, and then you as the kahal, you as the congregation are expected to sort of follow. So I do Shira Chadesha Shibuchu Geolim, and then you do Shira Chadesha Shibuchu Geolim L'Shimcha Sfahat Hayam Yachad Kulam Hodu V'Him Lichu V'Yameru Adonai Yimloch Leolam V'Hed. And then you're probably going to sing Sur Yisrael because we all love to sing it, right? Sur Yisrael, even if it's out of Nusach, who cares? Sure. And then we finish with the Chatima, or this bracha, which praises God as the Gaal Yisrael. I want to say something which I did not say when I taught the Sidor class, so this is new. This is true of both the Sidor and the Mahzor, okay? Every time you get to a Chatima like this, I want to say two things, and Vered can back me up on this, okay? This is both a sentence and also giving God a name at the same time, okay? So I want to say that this is both talking about God taking an action and also giving God a name at the same time. So this is both saying, blessed are you, God, who redeems Israel, right? Gaal Yisrael, right? God redeeming Israel, redeems Israel. We could talk about the verb tense, but the point is it could be active, but it also is talking about Ga'al Yisrael as the name of God. Every time that we get to Chatima in this form, we are doing the same thing, right? We're saying Ohev Amo Yisrael, God who loves his people Israel, or God, lover of his people Israel, right? So we're at the same time as we're saying what God does, we're also giving God names constantly in blessing God, right? Vera, do you want to sharpen that?
Yeah, I want to say that I would like it to be a name had the verb be in present tense. Like you said, go Ohev Israel or Shomer Israel. This verb here is put in past tense. So normally the present tense can be also the adjective describing the subject. So this is a little bit different, but yes, you can stretch it. The verb here is put in past tense, not in present, as I wanted it to be. But it still can be, the name, the one who redeems Israel, like the Redeemer of Israel.
Or the one who redeemed Israel.
Yes.
Right? Because it really is a past tense story in this case.
Right.
I'm with you. And my theology wants it to be Goel Yisrael.
Right.
Right? It's like it's Ohev Amo Yisrael. It wants it to be this ongoing or present tense verb, even though present tense doesn't really exist. I'm with you. But at least we might say Ga'al Yisrael might be saying the one who redeemed Israel. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So,
but it's I'm sorry, just one remark. Sure. In the previous line,
yes.
So you have Go Aleinu. So Goel, us. So he redeems us, Adonai Tzvaot. So it refers to him in the right tense. But yeah, okay, we'll go on with this.
Our Redeemer, Adonai, the Tzvaot Shemo, the host. Well, we could go on forever. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So let's go to the Amidah. Under normal circumstances, we would then go into Belachash. We would go into a whisper. I'm going to zoom out again so I can turn the page digitally. And then we would go into our repetition. The way that the Siddur is designed, it's important that you know that when you get to the part that says to feel, I don't know, I'm pointing at my screen, that's not going to help you. I'll point with a cursor. When it says Tefilat ha'amidah chazarat bishatz, that it's really important that you see that this says chazarat shatz and not the belachash one, and that this one says the silent amidah for Rosh Hashanah may be found on page X right here. You want to make sure that you're not doing the one that's out loud privately, because the one that's out loud contains all sorts of the poetry that we're talking about that is definitely not required to do privately. Right? Part of what I'm trying to get across to you is that we have this remarkable opportunity in this time of COVID. This is not silver lining language. I'm saying we have a remarkable opportunity in this time of COVID to focus on what it means to be praying kiyachid as individuals. And there is a whole practice in Judaism of what is the liturgy for an individual to pray, not just what do you pray when you're in a community. And there's a bigger picture to that, like what do you do when you do mincha at home on your own away from community? But we see miniature moments of this even in the context of a community service, like right here. Like, oh, hey everybody, go to your corners and pray your whispered Amidah, right? That's what we're saying in this moment that I'm holding you in right now. So what I'm saying is, in this moment, don't forget the liturgy that an individual says is actually a different and shrunken liturgy from the one that we are about to look at together, the expanded one. It does not include the expanded Kedusha. It doesn't include all of the extra poetry. So make sure that you follow the instruction right here that says The silent Amidah, should say whispered, for Rosh Hashanah may be found on page 11. Okay? So then, and because it's the same as the one that we say in the evening, that's why it's way back on that page. So then, after the whispered Amidah, we go to the repetition. Let's look at it. You ready? I'm so excited. This part should look really familiar. You can follow along in your outlines if you like, in the Playbill if you like. Here we begin with super familiar territory. On a Shabbat, we begin Baruch Atah Doshem, right? You recognize that? On a weekday, we'd begin Baruch Atah Adoshem Elokeinu Elokei Avotenu Elokei Avraham Elokei Yitzchak Elokei Yaakov. Same stuff. On High Holy Days, Baruch Atah Adoshem Elokeinu Elokei Avotenu Elokei Avraham Elokei Yitzchak Elokei Yaakov. It's just different nusach, but it's the same paragraph until Leman Shemo Be'ahava. And then, whoa, hold your horses. You got a little paragraph. That's going to be what we call a reshut. Reshut has two meanings. It's a category of poetry, and it also means like, it's almost untranslatable in a super cool way. It means permissible, but in like you have permission to do it or not do it. That's terribly translated, but it's one of those like almost untranslatably cool words. Reshut. It's in like the maybe not category, okay? But it's really cool. It's a category of poetry that we include, especially on this holiday. And it actually has its own nusach. I want you to listen out for it this year. You're going to catch this special nusach kind of sprinkled throughout the holidays. And almost everyone I know at Temple Beth Am who leads services knows the special nusach that belongs to it. Does anyone know what belongs just to Misod?
No.
Misod hachamim unevonim umilehem medat mevinim et techavim mitfilah uvtachnunim Lechalot uchanen pnei melech malchei hamlachim Adonai Adonim Yadadadadai. Oh my God, it's the best nusach, you guys.
Yeah, but how does someone who doesn't have a lovely, well-trained cantorial voice sound singing that? I mean, you sound wonderful.
Thank you. I think they do something like yadadadadai, yadadadadadai, something like that.
That one.
That's what I grew up with. But Misod HaChamim has a very, it has both music and it's literally, do you see how it's literally set apart on the page differently? Mm-hmm. Every indication that, whoops, you're in totally different territory. Everyone see how the structure is set up, the music, the editing, the atmosphere. It's like everything's supposed to be like, oh friend, we're not in Kansas anymore, right? It's like letting you know. And then after Vadonei Hadonim, the ark opens. If you have a minion present and you can open the ark, and oh my gosh, won't that be great this year if we can do that? Okay. And then next page.
It says the ark is closed.
Oh, the ark is closed there? Wait, that doesn't make sense. The ark should be open.
But in the next page we rise as the ark is open.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, that's just the English.
Yeah,
it says the ark is closed.
Yeah, that shouldn't be. That shouldn't happen there. That's very weird.
Rabbi Chorny?
Yes.
I didn't write it. I'm just a messenger.
Yeah, no, I think that's an editorial. I disagree with the editorial note there. I think it should be left open there. Yes, Vered.
If I recall correctly, on the structure that you showed us,
yes,
with colors, on page 81, where you got to Misod Chachamim.
Yes.
I believe you said Misod Kohanim.
Let's find out. Oh, wait, I didn't have to unshare.
Misod Chachamim, page 81.
Misod Chachamim. It's right there.
Oh,
yeah.
Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. I'm glad you checked. I could have made that mistake easily.
No. Okay, thank you.
No, it's no problem. So that's Misod HaChamim. That only appears there. That does not appear in the 10 days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. That's just on Rosh Hashanah itself. Okay? And then Zochreinu, right? So either Zochreinu Lechaim or Zochreinu Lechaim, probably one or the other of that. We sing together. The reason it's bolded is because the editorial choice here is to bold stuff they anticipate congregational singing in. That's the only reason it's bolded, okay? Just so you know, if you're wondering why it's sitting in bold there. Then we get to, we're right back into, if you're following along in the Playbill structure, after the Zochreinu L'chaim, remember us for life, Melech Hafetz B'chaim, God who desires life, right? God who wants and chooses in life. Zochreinu L'chaim Melech Hafetz B'chaim, V'chotvenu B'sefer HaChaim, and the one who writes in the book of life, L'mancha, and for your sake, Elohim Chaim, God of life. Keep an eye out for this, because at the very end of Ne'ilah, we're going to get to V'chotmenu, and seals us. What does that remind you of? V'chotmenu?
Chatima.
Yom Kippur.
Yom Kippur and Chatima. What did we just learn all about? Gemar Chatima Tova.
Sealing.
Right, and what is Gemar Chatima Tova all about?
Sealing us.
Hey, we found a connection between the High Holy Days and our vocabulary in the Mahzor. So, Gemar Chatima Tova is exactly that same word, right? Seal us in the book of life. When we are saying seal us in the book of life, Chatima, it's that same seal. We're picturing the wax seal of the sovereign, of the heavenly sovereign on the book of life, dripping wax and placing that seal. So we are going from the moment of V'chotvenu b'sefer ha'chaim to, at Ne'ilah, at the locking and sealing of the gates, V'chotmenu b'sefer ha'chaim. We're going to get there. And that extra bonus Amidah we're going to get to, V'chotmenu b'sefer ha'chaim. Okay? It's so cool when we get to that. When I daven that as a chazan every year, chills. Like, it's so cool. So, keep your eye out for that. And then, after that's done, we get to, we're back in normal Amidah territory. Melech Ozer Fukedu Moshiach Umagen Baruch Atah Adonai. But just kidding, that's not the nusach there, right? Baruch Atah Adonai Magin Avraham Ufuked Sarah. Right, because we're in High Holy Days. And then Atah Gibor Leolam Adonai Mechayim Itim Atah Rav Lehoshia. Normal Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed, except because it's so normal, the thing is, it's normal words, so it can't be normal music. You know what I'm saying? Right? Obviously. That's why we have that's why we have all that music like that. Right? Because if we had normal music there, it would feel like Shabbos. Somebody's singing it so beautifully.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I love it, Vered. I love it. I like your soundtrack. So it sounds like the High Holy Days, which is important because the words are normal. When we get through don't forget Micha Mocha Av Harachamim Zocher Yetzurav L'Chayim Barachamim. That is an extra line. Okay, it doesn't belong anywhere else except for on the High Holy Days. Who is like you is an extra Micha Mocha. It starts like other lines, but Av Harachamim Zocher Yetzurav L'Chayim Barachamim, who remembers your creations with compassion, barachamim. It's a quality of God that we call on a lot in this season, right? Rachamim. We call on that quality of God a lot. V'neh manata lachayot meitim, baruch atah Adonai mechayei hametim. Chatima, first of all. I want to point that out. Second of all, in every Amidah ever. Okay? And then, now we are in funny territory. Yimloch Adonai le'olam melachayach Zion lidor vador hallelujah. To signify that we enter weird territory, the cantor goes into major. Yimloch Adonai le'olam Elohayich Zion lidor vador hallelujah. V'ata kadosh yoshev tehilot Yisrael. Because everyone needs a little attention to the fact that we are in a weird part. And then we get to these piyutim. We are not going to spend time, because this is not a class on piyut. I just want to point out, you could spend some time on this on your own. There are 3 choices here. They're given Aleph, Bet, and Gimel to let you know, hey, maybe as a community you would want to choose 1 or 2 or 3 of these to do responsively, given the time that you have in your community, to do and celebrate this moment. Again, just like I said before, all they are, hey, this is a nice moment. Why don't we say a poem? That's all it is.
Is this another one where the leader makes that decision?
Yes. That is a moment where the leader makes that decision. And in any service that you're in this year, there is no way that you're doing any of these.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, we're not going to be doing these.
I can't imagine, for the sake of time, whether it's that you're on Zoom and no one has any attention span, or you're on, a field or a backyard and you don't have much time to be safely together. I can't imagine doing any of these this year. So here's 1. Here's 2. This is Adonai Melech, Adonai Malach, Adonai Yimloch Le'olam, Va'ed. And here's B'yom Din. Okay, so these are each of them popular in their own right. And then we get to the Kedusha. The Kedusha is mostly a totally normal Kedusha, textually for Shachri. There are 2 things I want to point out in terms of the textual structure, and one thing I want to say about the music. I'll say the music thing first. The music for the Shachri Kedusha is totally different on Rosh Hashanah than it is at any other time, because the text of it is pretty much the same as any other time. So that's pretty much the rule. The closer the text is to the regular weekday or Shabbat, the weirder the nusach probably is going to get to signify it's not the normal time of the year. Now I want to point out the 2 differentiations in terms of the text. The first is, Uvechinu lecha talei kedusha ki ata Eloheinu melech. Right? It's just teasing something. What's that tune teasing? Anyone recognize it? Unitane tokef. A lot of people like to do that line to Unitane tokef because in is it 2 pages or 3? I don't know. My page is turning very slowly digitally. The heat is slowing the internet today. It's 1 or 2 pages down the line. We get to Unitane tokef. So it's teasing Unitane tokef. So it's Uvechein ulecha. Now may our sanctification rise up to you, because Kivnei Marom, we're going to pass before God in the holy throne. It's like a little musical drush. Then we get to the text, but then we get to the bottom of the text, totally normal text, until Lo Yamush Le'olam Va'ed, right? Shouldn't be Yamush, shouldn't be taken off of our lips, ever, Ki El Melech, because you're the God, the King, the big one, Gadol, the Kadosh Ata, and you're sacred. And then it just stops. There's no Chatima. Okay? It just stops there. But we have mercy on people, so we let them be seated except for the Chazans. We just stop there without finishing. And then we go to this page, and it's this cool triplicate series of paragraphs special to the High Holy Days. And it speaks about, it's like a very interesting set of poetic additions. There's actually a nice little history of it on the right side of the page here. You can read about it, right? Ascribed by many scholars to the 3rd century, may constitute the earliest poetic additions to the Amidah. They mean to any Amidah, okay? These may be the earliest poetic additions ever made to any Amidah. It's lovely, uvechein, and therefore, and thus, God. And lovely, lovely, lovely paragraphs. These are the first place in the Amidah where you often hear the Chazan do a series of motifs that are unique to the High Holy Day Amidah. Usually, what Chazanim in the Ashkenazi tradition learn are motifs that they do, like little musical sets of patterns that we learn and that we apply in a certain order, one after another, and that we use over and over, kind of like trope, but at our discretion. And it's an improvisation throughout it. So I'm not doing a set, as opposed to Aleinu, or maybe a setting of Unitana Togef, which is a through composed musical piece. Unitana Togef Kidushat Hayom. It's a whole through composed beautiful piece, right? Uvechein Tain, I'm going to do something like this. Uvechein Tain Patecha Adonai Eloheinu al kol ma'asecha ve'ematecha. That's a motif. Da 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 da. Al kol ma'asheparata. Da 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 da. Viraucha kol amasim. That's another motif. Right?
Also major.
It's actually called Ukrainian Dorian. Okay, so it's the Ukrainian Dorian mode. It's a Dorian mode, but it's the Ukrainian Dorian motif going to the seventh. So what I'll do is like this, something like this. Here, I'll go to the major for you, Joel. Ready? I'll stay in it for a second.
Don't patronize me.
That's, and now I'm going to go out of the major. Al kol ma shebarata. Now I'm going to tell you something really funny. I did not grow up at a shul with a crowd of people that did this, but I went to be an intern at a shul in White Meadow Lake in New Jersey. Hopefully nobody listens to this on Apple Podcast from that shul and like tells this person what I'm about to say, but instead of there being a crowd of people who did this, there was one guy who did this. In some older shuls, there is a group of usually men, but I guess all sorts of people who respond to this kind of motif, not with an amen, because it's not a bracha, right? So there doesn't need an amen, but they actually have a yeah, bye, 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 bye. They actually have like this little responsorial musical thing that they would do every time you end a paragraph. So I would go, Veshimcha nora al kol ma shebarata, and they would go bye 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 every paragraph for an entire Amidah, right? And then I get to the end of the paragraph. Bimhera v'yameinu yai bye 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 every paragraph, and it was
that a conservative shul?
Yes.
Wow. Did you read the Heschel little blurb there on the English side?
I did not.
They're talking about how because there's three different paragraphs, that perhaps it's the will of God that there should be diversity in the forms of devotion, and that's why it's structured this way. Interesting for these times. That is beautiful, as lovely, and I will say there's so many side commentaries in this Mahzor I've never read because I'm usually too busy davening from it, and that's a shame. So I'm glad you pointed that out. And that's what I do when I don't know the davening.
Yeah, you can read a little A.J. Heschel. Good call, Joel. Heschel's always a good call. All right, let's get a little bit further before we end for the night. So after we get through these three Uvechaintains, and I wanted to demonstrate a little bit of that whole motif business because it really is a matter of improvisational work. It is not, it's not a pre-composed piece. It's something that we're often doing on the spot. On 88, we get finally to the end of the Kedusha, right? Kadosh ata v'nora shemecha v'neloach mibaladecha kakatu v'yitbach Adonai tzvaot b'mishpat v'el hakadosh nikdash b'tzedaka baruch atah Hashem hamelech hakadosh. Now normally this would be Ha'el HaKadosh. But starting on Rosh Hashanah and all the way through the entirety of the 10 days of awe, this becomes HaMelech HaKadosh, not Ha'el, the God who is the Holy One, right? Ha'el HaKadosh. Again, a name, right? Ha'el, the God who is the Holy God. But here, the King who is the Holy One. It just switches for the entirety. It's like, I think of it the way that the Torahs change clothes, right? You see what I'm saying? Right? They switch over to the white garments. I think of this bracha as like changing garments. This blessing changes garments for the holidays. It becomes the King that is the Holy One, not the God that is the Holy One. It's just a different outfit for like the week and change. That makes sense? It's still the same kind of chush, the same kind of feeling, but instead it's focused on the sovereignty, the kingship. Okay? And then we get to Atav v'chartanu mikol hamim. God, you've chosen us from all the peoples. Ahavta otanu v'ratzita banu. Very similar to the language, by the way, of Shabbat Mincha. You've chosen us from among all people, right? Ahavta otanu v'ratzita banu. You've loved us. You've wanted us. V'ra'antanu mikol leshono. You've raised us up, right? V'kidashtanu mitzvotecha. You've sanctified us with your commandments. V'kiraftanu malkeinu lavodatecha. You brought us close with your holy work. Probably means sacrifices. V'shimcha hagadol v'hakadosh alinu karata, and you call us by your great and holy name. V'titan lanu Adonai Eloheinu b'ahava et yom hazikaron hazeh, and you gave it to us, God, this day. Now we're going to get into it. Now we're getting into the sanctification of the day, the kedushat hayom, because, and this is where we may have to like leave it off for the day. We'll see how long you have the Zisfleisch to stick with me, okay? If you have the patience to get through this next little part tonight, or we may have to end for the evening and leave on a cliffhanger. But this is the part in the Amidah where structurally, on a weekday, this is the part where I say, if you only ever come to services on Shabbat, you're missing out. Because on weekdays, 3 times a day, we ask for like everything. Okay? The whole middle section of weekday prayers for 13 paragraphs is, and I want this, and I want that, and we'd like this, and it would sure be nice if you do that, right? So we start with the personal. It's like, health would be great, right? Nice weather would be great, and then like we go to, please return our prophets and our people and return us the land, and peace would be great. That whole middle section on Shabbat and on holidays, we just lift it out and neatly replace it with, on Shabbat, praises for Shabbat, and on sanctified days, we replace it with, this day is real nice, God, thank you so much for it. So this is that part, okay? This is the thanks for Rosh Hashanah. That's this part. So you're really missing out if you're not praying every day, because you're missing out on all the good, juicy, please give me all the fun stuff part. But this is the part where we thank God for giving us a great day. And this is a very familiar paragraph if you've ever done any Rosh Chodesh davening, which, by the way, Chodesh Tov, it's Rosh Chodesh Elul as of this evening. So if you've ever done any kind of Rosh Chodesh davening, even on a weekday, you've seen this paragraph, Yahalei v'yavo. There's no blank spot in here for, do this on this day or this on that day, because it's actually plugged in for Rosh Hashanah here. So, and you gave us, God, this Yom HaZikaron, right? This day of remembrance, a day for recalling the Yom Teruah. That Teruah is the sounding of the shofar. Mikra Kodesh is called the sanctified day. Zecher Litziat Mitzrayim, a remembrance of the Exodus from Egypt. Who knows why, but every day somehow became a Zecher Litziat Mitzrayim. Just kind of everything became that, right? We like mentioning the Exodus from Egypt because God is a redeemer, and that feels great. Then we get this whole Ya'aleh v'Yavo paragraph. We get this every single time there's a new month. And you know what? Rosh Hashanah is just a new month, okay? I mean, it's a big new month, but it's a new month. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. It's just another Rosh Chodesh. It just happens to be the big one. So this is just the paragraph we get every single Rosh Chodesh on Rosh Chodesh davening, including today. Right? It just happens it's Rosh Chodesh Tishrei, which is the big one. Today's Rosh Chodesh Elul. We're going to say the same one tomorrow morning if you come to services. Okay? 7:30. It's a little less reasonable timing. And then we get to the Elokeinu Ritzei paragraph. We always get to these big paragraphs. This one's just a little longer than usual. This is extra melechi. It's an extra kingshipy paragraph that we get in here. It's a beautiful, extra, little paragraph about God's sovereignty. That's all it is. And it's an extra, it's actually kind of a tongue-twistery paragraph. I always trip it up every year. Don't listen to me carefully when I daven it. I trip it up every year. But it's an extra paragraph about sovereignty. And then we get to the Elokeinu Ritzeh paragraph. We say it every Shabbat. And if you look carefully at the red words, you'll recognize the Shabbati words, right? Because on Shabbat we say, Elokeinu, Elokei Avotenu Ritzeh V'nuchatenu. So if you read the red words, you see the Shabbat ones, right? But if you read the black words, the ones that are the standard ones, you'll see the ones for Rosh Hashanah, which are, thank you, God, for giving us this part, right? You've given us, right? You've kept us holy through mitzvahs, through commanding us, and let the Torah be our portion.
First day Rosh Hashanah, we're going to be saying those words this year.
You beat me to it, Barbara. You're totally right. And so we have to say both. And you know what that does? It ruins the tunes for everything. It ruins the Shabbat tunes because then I got to fit the Rosh Hashanah stuff in. And it ruins the Rosh Hashanah tunes. Can I show you? Ready? Here, look down with me. Ready? Melech al kol haaretz, mekadesh haShabbat veYisrael. It ruins everything. So you have to wait till Sunday to sing it right. So it ruins everything when it's on Shabbat. But
I'm responsible for that. I want to report it.
Very good. Well, you'll get a reporting of 7 different services this year. Just you wait. So, Barbara, you're totally right. The first day of Rosh Hashanah this year, we have to include that too. Oh my gosh, we almost got through the Amidah. Can we do it? Let's get through it. Because all of a sudden, we're done with the Elokeinu Ritzeh paragraph that we get in every Amidah. Are you following me structurally? We got through that middle chunk where we take out the stuff we asked for. Instead, we stuck in thank you for Rosh Hashanah. And now we got through the God. We always get the Elokeinu Ritzeh paragraph that ends with a Mikadesh Yisrael V'Yom whatever, who sanctifies Israel and Yom Shabbat, right? Mikadesh HaShabbat, usually on Shabbat. But instead we get Yom HaZikaron here, or HaShabbat V'Yisrael V'Yom HaZikaron here. And then we get something we say, now we're back to territory that we say every single day. So if it were Tuesday, you would recognize same as what we say to any Tuesday, right? Or if we're Shabbat, right? But we're in Rosh Hashanah, so we're not. So the Nusach is the only thing keeping us different, okay? All the way through V'techazene Einenu, all of this is going to be the same Nusach as usual. It is literally this entire page except for one exception. This one has the same thing as that other Ne'ilah piece. Uchtov lechaim tovim kol b'nei veritecha, and write for life that is a good life, all of the children of your covenant. Right? Uchtov lechaim tovim kol b'nei veritecha. And when we get to Ne'ilah, that switches to and seal for life, for good life. Okay? Now also switches over. But that's the only exception on this entire page. The rest of the page is identical to everyday davening. Where we say, thank you, God. We do the Modim paragraph where the leader does this paragraph. We do this paragraph in parallel to them. We say that Ve'al Kulam Yiparach V'Tramam Shem Chal Malkeinu Tamid Le'olam Ba'ed. This weird little paragraph where the congregation says it first and then the leader says it. U'tzov V'Chaim Tovim Kol B'nei Veritecha. And then V'chol Echem Yudech Hasela. There's a full bow here, by the way, but you don't have to worry about that. That's for the leader to worry about. And finally, if we're in a minyan, we do the priestly blessing, just as usual. Sim Shalom. But there's one thing to know. Before Sim Shalom ends, right? Uvchosha bishlomecha. Before it ends, we get B'Sefer Chaim. It gets plugged in right there. Okay, B'Sefer Chaim, or whatever tune for B'Sefer Chaim you do. Sefer Chaim, whatever tune you're doing, it gets plugged in the middle, like before the Chatima, before that little end, and the Chatima changes, right? Mivarechet Mo Yisrael Bashalom gets changed to Oseh HaShalom. And that also changes clothes like the Torah mantles do. It changes for all of the 10 days. Okay? Oseh HaShalom stays changed for all 10 days. So it's once we get past that Mekadesh Yisrael Yom HaZikaron, we basically are back in totally familiar territory, except for those itsy bitsy little insertions that are special for the days and are mostly special for all 10 days. Okay? And then we get to Avinu Malkeinu, but not on Shabbat. So the first day of Rosh Hashanah this year, we will not say Avinu Malkeinu. And I'm going to save that for next time. And you'll have to hold on to that teaser I gave you, which is what's the other piece of liturgy that we'll get to next time in the Torah service that's similar to the Mi Chamocha.
You have been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast site or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about Temple Beth Am Los Angeles, go to tbala.org.